Hello again, my name is Doug Smith and welcome to the 5 May 2017 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Today we're going to be discussing the current status of the planning process of the Mount Hope Park project down by the Bristol Ferry Town Common. And we have with us Gary Crosby, our Portsmouth Town Planner, Chuck Allett, Director of the Aquidneck Land Trust, and Craig Pereira, the Project Manager for the Horsley Witten Group, which was selected to develop a plan. Welcome back to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Chuck, I wonder if we could start with you, and perhaps you could give us a kind of a recap of where we are on this thing and where we've been.
Sure. So in January of 2016, the Aquidneck Land Trust and the town of Portsmouth partnered in the acquisition, protection, and now we're in the process of trying to create a coastal pocket park at this spectacular piece of property below the Mount Hope Bridge. Because the property has some challenges, it really was very important that we go through a very thorough planning process so that we could vet concerns of the neighbors and also look at some of the coastal features and what needed to be done with those. So through the generosity of the Van Buren Charitable Foundation, we received, ALT received a grant to do this planning process. So in November, we hired a consultant, Horsley Witten, to help us with the planning process, and they have been just absolutely excellent to work with, and I think everyone should agree that it's been a very transparent and open process. It's been both public and we have a steering committee that has been working on this process as well to balance kind of the neighborhood concerns, but also to try to put the best town park in on this property as we can. The conservation easement does have certain restrictions, and we will talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, it's going to be a passive recreational park, and that is what ALT and the town decided that was the appropriate use for this property. So through this process, initially we did a kickoff in December, and we have since had public meetings, steering committee meetings, and looked at some of the challenges and opportunities with this property. We've taken in a whole lot of public input, both through public workshops as well as a survey that was on the site. The online address for the site will be coming up on the screen. I suggest to anyone take a look at the history and the information on the website, but we did go through a survey. We got a lot of input about the property, and now we're in the process of kind of rolling out a preliminary concept plan with the help of the consultant. And I think it's a very exciting concept plan, and I hope the community will believe that as well. There will be a site view of the property tomorrow, which will be from 10 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, so it's you can come at any time. There'll be representatives of the steering committee there to assist you.
Okay, sounds great. I know I really appreciate myself, as I said before, Horsley Witten's public approach to this, because I think that's exactly what we need for a property like that. Mm-hmm. Gary, let me get to you for a second about the easement, and there seems to be some misunderstanding out there about what can and what cannot be put on the property. I wonder if you could address that.
Let me explain what a conservation easement is first. When we talk about property rights in law school or in planning school, we talk about it as a bundle of rights that you hold for your property, or a bundle of sticks. In this particular, the analogy is that you have the right to possess the property, the right to exclude people from the property, you have the right to lease or sell the property or give it away or all of these separate property rights can make up this bundle of rights. When you have a utility easement on your property, which many people do, that's one of the sticks that's been taken out of the bundle and is owned by the utility company. When you could take out one of those sticks and sell it to somebody that wants the mineral development rights to your property. And in the case of this conservation easement here, the land trust has purchased one of those sticks from us that tells us, or that restricts us to how the property can be developed. The purpose is well stated in the conservation easement, and that is that the premises will thereafter and forever be used and maintained in its open, scenic, water resource, recreation, and natural ecological condition, and to prevent any use of the premises that would significantly impair or interfere with the conservation values of the premises. So that is the guiding principle here of this conservation easement. We can, and basically the prohibited uses as outlined in the conservation easement are basically anything that is not permitted pursuant to this. The conservation easement quite explicitly talks about developing a plan, which is what we have been doing, and prohibited uses are basically anything that is not pursuant to that plan as it goes forward. We can't subdivide the property. We can't put buildings and swimming pools and any kind of improvements on there that are not consistent with the plan and the management plan. No commercial or industrial activity should be allowed except for what we'll get to. So we can't fill or excavate the property without unless it's part of the plan. The things that we can't operate snowmobiles and dune buggies and things like that. So all the prohibited uses are those which would be inconsistent with the purpose of the conservation easement. What we can do is we can restore the existing structures that are there. We can fix the seawall. We clear the concrete foundations and reseed. We can build a septic system. We can construct unpaved permeable surface parking lots. We can restore the dock, and one of the we can restore and create a coastal salt marsh area. So we're doing habitat reconstruction, and there is one, and we're allowed to construct additional structures deemed necessary to enhance and service the support of the park, gazebos and restrooms if we choose to, and so forth. So one of the things that we are permitted to do as well is to generate limited commercial revenue from rental uses of portions of the premises, provided that such revenue generation is placed in a park and recreation enterprise fund, that it's always ancillary to the primary use as a free and open park, and that it's restricted at any one time to no more than 1/4 of the premises land area, and you can't block that limited commercial use can't block access to the water. So what's permitted is the things that are necessary to create a passive park and to express the conservation values of the easement. What's prohibited is anything that is not aligned with that.
Yeah, and it's all written in clear language, and this document is available, I believe, online.
Yes, it's available, and certainly as we're going through the planning process, every word of this is being addressed as we go through.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Craig, you're the project manager for the Horsley Witten Group in developing the plan, and you've had several public meetings so far. Can you talk about those and kind of what your group took away from some of these meetings?
Sure. We had our first public workshop on February 1st, and we started out with a brief open house where, we always try to make sure that we can touch a range of demographics, and so the open house was intended mainly for people who couldn't dedicate a whole evening, but they could drop in, look at our plans, talk to the team, and then leave. We also had a formal presentation at the beginning half of the workshop, where we had you do the overview of the history of the site, which I think is an important start to the planning process. And then the project team went through the site analysis and existing conditions analysis. Woods Hole Group, who's on our team as well, had pulled together some preliminary alternatives for shoreline stabilization, looking at the disrepair of the seawall and things like that. So we had that first, and then we also did the visual analysis. Bradford Associates is also on our team, landscape architects, and they looked at the view sheds from within the site and then out of the site into the bay. And then the second half, which was really more the emphasis of the meeting, was small facilitated work groups, where we had a project team member working with a small number of residents, and we asked them 3 questions. We asked them, what are the major opportunities that they see with redevelopment of the site? Some of the prioritized items that they came up with was that it's an opportunity for a passive recreation site. Picnic areas, personal contemplation, meditation areas, maybe a walk. Coastal access was also important, enhancing the natural aesthetics and the natural habitat areas that are already there, and then using the opportunity to celebrate the history of the site, because it does have a lengthy, really robust history.
Sure does. Yeah.
The second question was, what are the major challenges with redeveloping the site? And the priorities for that really came down to parking, traffic, trash and litter, enforcement of operating hours, and keeping it low impact and making it family and child friendly. The third question we asked was whether or not folks agreed with the shoreline stabilization alternatives that Woods Hole Group had presented earlier in the evening. And for the most part, folks felt it's a range of different alternatives, and folks felt that they were comfortable with what was being presented. Following the workshop, we had a focus group, which is 5 members from the community that were selected by the steering committee, and their charge is merely to make sure that the project consultant team is presenting the facts and the existing conditions.
And you heard the same thing they heard.
Exactly. And in general, the focus group felt like we had presented the data appropriately, and we'll have another touch point with them later on in the process. We also kicked off our online survey on February 1st, the day of the public workshop, and we had, I think it was open for about maybe 6 or 7 weeks, and we had about 120 responses. And it was really, what we heard back was really consistent with what we heard at the workshop.
Just for perspective, kind of, how many people do you think attended that first public workshop?
The first public workshop, I think we had about 65 people who signed in.
It was a good crowd.
It was a good crowd. We had town hall.
Really, really.
Yeah, and it was, if you were there, it was the public, the small work groups, it was loud and it was a little chaotic, but it was really robust, and it was, sometimes people don't feel comfortable speaking out in a crowd, and when you break things down to that level where there's maybe 8 to 10 people with one facilitator, everybody gets the opportunity to have their thoughts and concerns raised. And it's great to go back to the project website after the fact, because people can see that their comments were noted and that their opinions matter. And then it's also a great repository for people who couldn't stay for the presentation and just popped in.
Yeah, I've got a lot of good comments from that. People able to come in and look at the drawings and things.
Right. And being able to talk to the project team one-on-one too during that gallery session is pretty important. But again, the survey, it pretty much mirrored what we heard at the public workshop. Folks are concerned with parking, they're concerned with trash and litter, they're concerned with maintenance. So then the next step for that, after the survey findings were reported, and they're all posted on the project website, was to start to look at phase 2, and which is the development of the program element. So we looked at what's possible from the conservation easement that Gary just reviewed. We looked at what folks said at the public workshop, and then we looked at what folks said in the responses to the public surveys. And I really think that our program and our concept is extremely responsive to the 3 different pieces that I just mentioned. It's the intent is to be a passive recreation park. We recognize that we're not going to be able to make every single resident's needs met or make them happy, but we think that it's a nice balance in scale and use. We actually, when we developed our program, we came up with our draft concept plan. We met with CRMC. We have a representative, Kevin Cute, who's on our steering committee as kind of a liaison to us to make sure that the things that we're proposing as draft is in line and aligned with the the thought process for CRMC, the Coastal Resource Management Council. They were extremely happy with what we had presented. We followed that meeting up with another steering committee meeting where we presented the program elements and we presented the concept plan for the park. Overall, it was well received by the steering committee. There were a few things that we needed to tweak, but essentially, like I said before, I really feel like we are responsive to the 3 kind of governing pieces that are, informing the development of this concept plan at the park.
Okay, and the important thing here, I think, is one, you're opening it up on Saturday, right?
Tomorrow, yes.
Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, 10 to 4, I think. And people can come down and 10 to 3. People can come down and see what the site looks like, and people will be there to explain why some remediation is needed and that kind of stuff. And then I think the important date is the 11th,
Right.
Which is next Thursday.
Right.
And that's the next public workshop.
Correct.
And I think people have a lot of sources of information now. They have it online. They can go down and actually see it, touch it. And then they can come to these meetings and have their view expressed. So.
Right. And, the intent of the open site tomorrow is, maybe 25% of respondents on the survey identified that they hadn't been on site, because it's been closed.
Yeah, it's been
and,
locked.
residents have obviously gone on site, and, there's always seems to be somebody there, even though there's a locked gate.
Yeah.
But we really wanted to be able to afford the community the opportunity to get on site and just have that existing conditions kind of based knowledge so that when they come to the meeting on Thursday, they're a little bit more aware and informed of what we're working with. And then the meeting on Thursday is really intended to review the public workshop findings, review the survey findings, introduce the program, the draft program development, the uses and the different parameters around that, and then to have the community weigh in and to see that whether or not we've responded to the 3 different governing documents for development of the site.
Okay, so to be clear on what's being presented on Thursday, are you going to talk about kind of some recommendations? Is
Yes.
that what it is for the park?
Yes, we'll review what brought us to that point. So from the last public workshop on February 1st until that night, and then what we'll do is Bradford Associates will go through the draft program, which identifies the different uses that are being addressed. It'll identify circulation, and then what the parameters of that are. And then we're actually going to have, instead of small work groups, we're going to have stations set up where people who come to the meeting can go station to station and to vet that information with them to find out or to make sure that we've responded appropriately and adequately to the governing documents and for the development of the site.
Yeah.
And having people let us know, have we responded favorably? Is there something missing? If so, what is that? So it's, we've already asked what their preferences are for uses and for what their preferences are for not something being, being permitted. But what we really want to know now is have we assembled all that information into a plan that seems reasonable and responsive.
Okay, now,
There will be a draft site plan
Yes.
of the whole site.
On
then
Thursday.
And the
Yeah,
individual elements then
Okay.
that people can.
and then that will
Comment
also
on.
be posted presumably on the website at some
Yeah,
point?
yeah. The PowerPoint presentation will include the program elements, and then it'll include the concept plan and how those program elements fit into
Yeah.
that concept plan. And then people will have the opportunity to mill around for the second half of the meeting and respond directly to that plan and to those program elements.
Yeah.
After the public workshop is done, we'll have the presentation and all the graphics posted to the project website again. And then we'll also do a summary of comments from that public workshop so everybody can see other people's comments to that concept plan.
Okay, now, what would be the final step in this process after all this is done? We have another open workshop for the public to come in. And one of the things I found interesting at that first public workshop was that we're not just talking neighbors of the park, we're talking people all over town.
Sure.
Which is kind of the way it should be.
Sure.
Yes.
So I thought that was neat. But so you go through that. We're having another one next week. What is the plan after that? In generic terms. Just
Sure. So after that, we would. I also wanted to just step back one more time,
Sure.
and I just wanted to let folks know that the draft concept plan has also been not only addressed with CRMC, but also with the fire department as far as circulation and
Okay.
emergency access, and
Yeah.
the fire chief is on board with what we've pulled together for a draft. So the next process after that would be to meet with the steering committee. Well, we'll meet with the focus group again after the workshop to, again, make sure that we presented our information adequately and in an appropriate way, in a comprehensive manner. We'll meet with the steering committee again, and we will talk about the outcomes and the input from the public workshop from the community members. We'll figure out what we have to tweak and what we have to revise on that concept plan or on the program. And then we'll pull together a final conceptual development plan. We'll pull together cost estimates for those improvements. And then we'll do a public hearing with the community to present that final concept plan and that cost estimate. We'll pull together the text and the graphics for that master plan.
Okay.
And then present that to the town.
now, is there? Let
To
me
the
ask.
town, through the town council.
Through the
Yes,
council.
yes.
Yeah. Now, is there any kind of approval of this at some point, or is this just kind of an informational thing? Let me ask Chuck or Gary.
We haven't really discussed that, but I think it would be appropriate to at least ask the council for a conceptual approval of the plan and the ultimate concept plan for
Correct.
the property. So
Right. And
I think so.
having this planning process completed, having the town kind of sign off on that
Yeah.
process, that's going to do a lot for the community when they are trying to seek funds, some grant money to make these improvements come to life.
Right.
Having that process, that planning process completed, having the data compiled, and having the town show their support for that plan gives the town some teeth when they apply for some grant opportunities.
And the land trust's
Right.
approval
Right.
of the plan as well.
Craig, there are a lot of folks in town that think the Bristol Ferry Town Common is very special, and I know there's been concern that part of the plan might be trying to put something on the common or infringe on it in some way. I know people have talked to you about this at these different meetings. I presume that some of those comments have been filtered in your plan?
Sure. We've taken all those comments into consideration, and the town common is impacted in the fact that it provides the access to the site. But we did take, when we did look at the program elements and we looked at the conceptual development plan, we did take a holistic look, and they really should tie in with each other because they are connected physically. But we're not looking to make any changes to the town common sites. We will probably try to replicate some of the interpretive signage that's there on site, and maybe some of the use of planting materials and vegetation to try to tie the two sites in together. But there really are no anticipated changes to the town common.
But we realize that the two sites can't be
No.
considered in
They
isolation.
complement
of
each
each
other,
Right.
absolutely. I think everybody understands that, too. Let me back up a second, because I know you're talking about after this public meeting on Thursday, there's going to be another one, a final
It'll be more of a public hearing, maybe
Public
with the town
hearing.
council and planning board, where
Okay.
we'll present our final.
Any kind of time frame for that? Just
I would say within the next couple of months. It depends on how much tweaking we have to do to the concept plan, to the program, and then scheduling that
Okay.
with the players.
so at that point, Gary, then it's going to be over to you. Where do we find money for this project?
Well, there's a variety of sources for that, but from DEM recreation grants to some shoreline resiliency kinds of grants, and the most important, and we'll just have to, along with Horsley Witten and the Land Trust, we will just have our antennas out. But the most important piece of that is that we will have
Have a plan.
in hand. We'll know what we're going to do. We'll know what it's going to cost, and that's precisely what these funding sources are looking for. Is that we've got it all nailed down, and that and it makes them look good because they know that we have gone through this whole public process to create this plan, and I'm very hopeful that we can.
Well,
find
as a Portsmouth resident and a nearby neighbor to the site, I'd like to thank ILT, Chuck. I think what you're doing, this helps the town immeasurably, not just the money to buy the property, but I think this, allowing us to bring Horsley Witten in, come up with a professional plan, I think is absolutely great. So,
Well, we needed a partner who really saw the vision we did in this park, and the town council really stepped up. So, I mean, I think it's going to be a fabulous park when it's done.
me too. I agree. Okay, that's about it for me, folks. We'll see you next time. Try to get out there on Saturday tomorrow down at the Mount Hope Park, and also on the 11th, next Thursday, come to the public workshop. That's it for me, Doug Smith, signing off. I'm Doug Smith for the Portsmouth Historical Society. Just wanted to let everyone know that we had our second Portsmouth History Trivia Night back on the 20th of April at the Valley Inn. I just wanted to show you what the first place prize looked like. This was won about a week ago by Team Spencer. Very close contest, but it was a lot of fun for everybody concerned. We had an earlier one. Middle school beat the high school in their team, and they won this. Their first place prize was also this copy of the Portsmouth Compact for their walls. And we hope to have do another one of these things probably in the fall, and we'd like everybody to come out and join us. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Portsmouth This Week is a regular program on Newport County Television that brings you important information on town organizations and policies and discussions with town leaders and other important decision makers. A listing of program times is available on Cox Cable Channel 17 or at the program listing website. A listing of all programs with YouTube links is also available at the Portsmouth Town website.